what's in the case? Who would like to see what's in the case? Should we push the button from the White House? Do we push the button from the White House? Count down with me from 3, 2, 1. To the 2019 Student Action Summit. The largest ever gathering of young conservative leaders and from all 50 states and a couple countries. We got some people from the UK here. Where's our UK friends? Congratulations, by the way. Good job beating back the socialists over there. Now that we got to do our part. So anyone from California here? Where's our California friends? Right there? Got a lot of work ahead. How about Pennsylvania? Where's our Pennsylvania folks? Ohio? Louisiana? Anyone from Louisiana? Now, I do this every year. Alaska? Yes! Give it up for Alaska, right? We got some amazing speakers. Not the least of which, when the left voted the way they did last night. By the way, lots of members of the media here. What do you think of that? What do you think of what they've done to this president? This president has done nothing wrong. This president has done nothing but deliver results for our country. Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, 150 circuit court judges. We're finally energy independent. The best economy in United States history. NAFTA renegotiated. GDP growth, lowest ever black unemployment, lowest ever Latino unemployment, lowest ever women unemployment. And yet, the left is doing everything they can to remove this president. Why? Because they don't just hate him, they hate you. He's just in the way. They hate everything this country stands for, and for the next couple days, we will be able to celebrate this country. You'll be able to hear from the greatest leaders in the entire conservative movement, and then you'll be able to hear from the man himself who's fighting for our country, and you'll be able to show him and show the world that we, the American people, still stand by this president, stand by what he's doing for our country, and we will not allow the radical left to continue this path of destruction against this movement. We have hundreds of campuses represented here, high school and college. It's incredible to see what first started at Turning Point USA with just a little over 100 students at our first Student Action Summit grow into absolute fire code capacity here in Palm Beach. And well, hopefully we don't have to have that conversation with the fire marshal, but I think the president outranks fire marshal, right? And in the kind of chain of command. So we'll see. I'll tell you though, to be able to travel to so many of your campuses this last year, from Ohio State, I went to Brown. Are the Brown folks here, by the way? By the way, if you want your kid to hate America, send them to Brown, okay? To UCLA, University of Texas, Austin. Turning Point USA is on pace to have over 1,000 chapters across the country. All of our Turning Point chapter leaders, thank you for all the amazing work you're doing. But make no mistake, we are in the midst of such a consequential battle in this country right now. And for the fact that we have thousands and thousands of students on Christmas break here in Palm Beach to celebrate our country, to celebrate conservative values, that should really tell people, especially going into 2020, there's something happening in this country. We're not going to allow the ruling class elites, the radical left, with their socialist policies, to continue to indoctrinate the next generation, to continue to destroy this country from within. And we are a movement here that is growing by leaps and bounds. And we have another fun announcement. You might have saw it. The President of the United States will be introduced by Rush Limbaugh on Saturday. So now the question is, well, we got Levin, we have Beck, Hannity, Limbaugh, all the talk radio, Shapiro as well. A united conservative movement cannot be beat. When we are united as a movement, every single piece of the movement, we got our libertarians. Who's our libertarian? We love you guys. Conservatives and proud conservatives. Okay. All together. As long as you believe America's the greatest country ever to exist in the history of the world, you believe in the Constitution, you believe in free enterprise, and you want to do everything you possibly can to fight against the rise of socialism and the threat of Marxism, welcome aboard, going into 2020 to continue to fight together. Because you know when the left wins? They win when the conservative movement is squabbling. They move when the conservative movement is fighting. And we are more united than ever before to have the speakers and the leaders together to say, we will never allow America to become a socialist country. You know what? That's a great point. We should pledge allegiance. So let's pledge allegiance. I'll lead us in the pledge because we love our country. Join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. For our first speaker tonight, someone that I grew up listening to, he has some really fun surprises for you guys. He has a history collection he's going to share with you that is extraordinary. He's one of the most listened to, most well-respected authors in the entire conservative movement. He helped lead the Tea Party movement in 2011, in 2010 and 2011. He is one of the most sought-after speakers in the entire conservative movement on hundreds of radio stations across the country. And it's such an honor to be able to open our Student Action Summit, the largest ever gathering of young conservatives in the history of our country, with none other than Glenn Beck. To be self-evident
that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, and among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. I have to tell you right off the start, you give me hope. You give me hope that America has a very, very bright future. I've been around crowds a long time. I don't think any convention of 18 to 24-year-olds would start with somebody from the crowd saying, "Let's say the Pledge of Allegiance." Fantastic. Fantastic. I want to talk to you. I'm going to try really hard. Who has a phone in the front? You have a phone? You have a phone with the glasses. Your job, I have to be off the stage in 36 minutes. So I don't care if I'm in the middle of a sentence. You're just like, time! Can you do that? What's your name? 6:30. Or, yes, 6:30. My watch has stopped. Good thing I wasn't going by my watch. So by what? 6:43? All right. I have no idea what time it is now. Screwed this up already. Okay, you ready? You ready? I want to ask you what our mission statement is. As a country, what's our mission statement? Okay, that's a bad idea asking because I can't understand any of you. Here is our mission statement. It's clear. It's the greatest mission statement of all time. It's the greatest words ever uttered. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain inalienable rights. And among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And why is government created? Government is instituted among men to protect those rights. These are the first 2 pages. These are the last 2 pages of the original draft in Thomas Jefferson's own hand of the Declaration of Independence. I want you to notice up at the top, I don't know if you can zoom in, but up at the top of this one, you will see a few words that are capitalized. And the only words capitalized in this draft are United States of America. Everything else is written in script. Oh, except for 2 words. Christian and men. Now, what are we told by everyone all the time? Our old dusty documents couldn't understand what we're going through today. If I hear Nancy Pelosi one more time say how much she loves the Constitution, I'm going to vomit. Everyone keeps telling us they're old dusty documents from the past, and our founders were nothing but white, racist, rich men. And Thomas Jefferson, you know, he was the worst of all of them. How could Thomas Jefferson write that all men were created equal when he himself was a slave owner? How did he not see that? He did. In the rough draft. I want to first point out that in the draft that finally made it, it says another word that is capitalized. Unanimous Declaration of the United States of America. Unanimous. Because before this was written, John Hancock said, guys, you know and I know, we want to break away from England. That's insanity. That's the greatest military force. That's like 5 of us going, hey, let's take on SEAL Team 6. It'll be fun. That's insane. And we have to be good, decent people. We have to be God-fearing people. We have to be on a righteous march. But we also have to be in lockstep. And if we disagree on anything, the king will find that sliver of light between us and worm his way in, and he'll break us apart. So, do we all agree? This declaration that Thomas is going to write has to be from unanimous consent. Aye. Everyone said aye. Kind of like that. So the first draft, Adams, Franklin, and Jefferson. Now let's go to the Christian and the word men. When I first saw this, I was blown away. How do I live in this country and not know this part of our history? The first draft, he capitalizes it. His handwriting is consistent through all of it, except for this paragraph, and it's in the usurpations part. The first part is, hey, look, King, we got to break up. I mean, usually I say it's not you, it's me, but this time, really, it is you. You suck. And you don't even know who we are. Then you get to we hold these truths to be self-evident, and what we believe government is supposed to be, and how a king doesn't work in that. And then it gets to, yeah, and you know what? You're always yelling at me because I don't pick up my underpants on the floor. And you're always yelling at me because of this, and you're doing this, and you're doing that. That's the usurpation. And he goes through a whole line of things that the king had done. But then his handwriting changes. And he said, worst of all, this Christian king, mocking the king, this Christian king violates the biggest, most basic right of all mankind. He takes a people who have never offended him on a far distant part of the world, and he scoops them up and he puts them in slave ships and he ships them across the sea. And if they survive this horror show, he then takes these men and sells them on the open market. It was insane at the time for anybody to say, that black man, that slave, is a man. Thomas Jefferson capitalized it and underlined it. That's a man. And what's happening here is wrong. And he goes on to say, and every time we try to stop the horror of slavery, he stands in our way. And now that we're fighting for our independence, our freedom, the people we want to free, he is now going to them and bribing them to kill us. That is the truth of our founding fathers. The only reason why that is not in the Declaration in the National Archives is because they voted it must be unanimous. Out of 13 colonies, how many were against it? 2. Our founders were racist? No. They're just like every other crowd. Out of 13, there'll be 2 or 3 that really suck. They were men that wanted to change the world. They were people that saw things differently. They saw things differently, and they did change the world. But these were men, these were great men. George Washington, at 8, I believe, wrote his own little diary, The Rules of Civility. How to be a man. Has anybody read it? Good for you. How to be a man. Who's even searching how to be a man, how to be a good man? He searched his whole life. When he was 13 years old, he received this. This is a compass, because he was a map maker. This is the only compass he owned his entire life. He had it at 13. He had it when he died. Every battle he was on, every time he opened a map, he had this. And what's amazing is there's a rub mark right towards the end where I think he held it his whole life as he thought. But a compass is about exactness. And that's who he was. He was a man of exactness. And I imagine him in my own mind holding this compass and rubbing it and thinking, what will free us? What will enslave us? What do I need to do? He served his whole life. He didn't want to. He was the kind of guy that when they came to him and said, hey, we want you to be in charge of the whole army, he said, I don't think you want that. I don't think you want that. In fact, I'm going to leave you guys alone so you feel free to say all the bad things about me, because I think that's a bad idea. He leaves them. He becomes the general of our army. He does it. He serves. He doesn't like it, but he does it. Everybody's against him. He has no chance of winning, none. He gets to the Delaware. He's lost everything from Boston all the way down. He's now retreating to Philadelphia. What a surprise, Congress has already fled. The weasels and the rats had already run away. And so he's coming to Philadelphia, pushed back from Boston to Philadelphia. And on one night, Christmas Eve, he receives the head of a drum from Thomas Paine, the guy who wrote Common Sense. And he's walking in the mud away from Washington. And he keeps hearing words in his head to the beat of the drum. He has no paper. So he looks at the drummer and says, I need the head of your drum. And he wrote a few words on it, rolled it up, gave it to a writer and said, bring this to Washington. He must see it. And Washington, not able to get anybody else into the boat, hey, let's go take on SEAL Team 6. We've been losing. I don't know if you got that. The writer comes up. Washington doesn't know what to do. He unrolls the head of the drum. And there are the words, these are the times that try men's souls. Sunshine patriots. We are winter soldiers. When the time gets tough, we get into the boats. When the buildings are coming down, we're going up the stairs. That's bred into us. It's one of the things that makes us unique and special and different. And we have fought this fight over and over and over again, and good men have bled and died. This is the collar from Abraham Lincoln's coat the night he died. This was cut off Abraham Lincoln as he lay dying in the theater. It was a different time. One of the women, she was an actress, and she said, oh, why, I must go comfort the president. I must go there, but first I have to change my clothes. And she changed into this beautiful new white gown that she had just purchased. And she went up into the box and said, why, I must hold him. May I hold the president? She gets down, she sprawls this white dress out, puts the president right here so he can bleed all over the dress, because she wanted to go on tour and become the Florence Nightingale. I am so happy that nobody knows that story, that nobody knows her name. Here's a man who knew he would be killed, who was first trying to save the Republic until everything went wrong and he was driven to his knees. Lord, what do you want? It's not about the Republic. It's about freeing God's children. And he did. And he makes the final covenant. We will be your people. You shall be our God. If we do these things, you will do these. You will give us protection. We lost every battle, I think, except for one or two before that covenant was made. He made that covenant at Gettysburg, 1863. We won every battle after. Lincoln thought things through. People say Lincoln didn't care about blacks in slavery. Really? Because this is a history changer. This is an original document in his own hand from about 1856 or 7, where he is trying to work out, how do I explain that slavery is wrong? If person A can prove, however conclusively, that he may have the right to enslave person B, why not snatch person B? And why not person B make the same argument, equally that, so he may enslave A? Well, you say A is white and B is black. It's color then. Oh, take care, writes Lincoln, because if you can slave the darker, then he who is lighter than you may be able to enslave you. No, it's intellect. Person A is smarter than person B. Oh, take care, because the person who comes in the room that is smarter than you then can enslave you. It's a new concept, and that's what we're all about. And we're about bravery, and we're about not our parties. We are about principles. We hold these truths to be self-evident. When Lincoln first came to Washington, he knew he was going to be killed. He had no idea how much they hated him. No idea. So he's going into Baltimore, and he's hearing people on the street. And the Secret Service, well, it wasn't Secret Service. There was a guy named Charles Pomeroy Stone. He was a Mexican-American general, hero. He's the first protector of a president. And he came in, and he said, look, we got to get you out of here. First thing, take off the stupid hat, man. Everybody knows it's you. Then he took him into a theater and put an old woman's cloak over him and said, bend down and leave the theater like this and get into a hansom cab out front. Lincoln hears what people are saying about him, and he's saved for the first time because they were going to kill him the next day, but he had already gotten to Washington undercover. That man, Charles Pomeroy Stone, later, because of political smears, because he didn't hate Southerners, he just thought the South was wrong, and he refused to hate his fellow American. It didn't sit well with people in Washington, D.C., and so there was a political trial. He was accused of things in a war or a battle that he wasn't even at. But just like we're seeing today, they didn't have any witnesses. They didn't have a case, so they didn't have a trial. But in that time, they just threw him in prison. Lincoln found out about it about 6 months into his prison sentence and said, you have him in prison? What are the charges? Release him, and release everybody that you don't have any charges on, that haven't had a trial. Release them. Well, Congress hasn't changed. They didn't listen. They didn't do it. 3 or 4 months later, Lincoln started to show his inner Donald Trump. He got him free. But his whole life had been so destroyed because he was smeared by the press and everybody in Congress that Charles Pomeroy still couldn't find a job. So he leaves and he travels the world, and he actually goes and he works in Egypt with the French. And he's there until about 1880 when he decides to come home. And when he gets home, he's like, maybe people have forgotten what they used to say about me. Nope. Still couldn't find a job until about 1884 when he gets a knock on his door. He opens it, and there are 2 U.S. military men standing at the door. He said, "What is it?" "Your country would like to know a couple of things. Were you in Egypt?" "Yes." "And you worked with the French?" "Yes." "And you're an engineer too?" "Yes." "Okay, we got to tell you, we just got this birthday present. And we got it from France, and it's ridiculous. And they just dumped it off onto our shore, and so it's sitting in a park in boxes and pieces. There's a big hand and a torch and then a head, and we don't know how to assemble it because everything is in French. Can you put it together? Can you build the stone base for it?" Because Charles Pomeroy Stone knew that it wasn't the country that was against him, the people had gone astray, he said, "I'll do it." This is the original purchase order signed by Charles Pomeroy Stone for the base, all of the stones in the Statue of Liberty. The man who the country had abused believed not in the people, not in Congress, not in the politicians, but in our mission. And what happened in the rest of the world? While we were fighting over here, have you ever seen George Washington crossing the Delaware? Seen it? Okay, George Washington crossing the Delaware. Can anyone tell me where the original is? Where? On the table. No, it's not here. But very good answer. It's actually not in the Met. That's a copy. It's not in the Smithsonian. It actually doesn't exist anymore. It was burned in Berlin when it was struck by Allied bombers in World War II. What? Were we loaning it to them? No. It was made by a German for the German people. Because in the late 1850s, this guy named Karl Marx said, "You know what? I got this idea. We'll make everybody the same." And this painter had lived in America and said, "No, that's the wrong direction. We have to be more like America. We have to be like them." Go home or pull it up on your iPad or your phone. Not now, that would be rude, but pull it up and look at it. You're going to find a woman, an African American, a Native American. You're going to find a farmer. You're going to find 2 presidents. You're going to find everybody in our society in that boat. Because the painting's purpose was to teach Europe and the Germans, when we all volunteer to go into the boat because there's a great idea, it'll change the world. The Statue of Liberty is the same way. It wasn't a gift. What person gives a gift like that? Statue of Liberty. Oh, I bet they do not have one of these. Well, I hope not. Wouldn't it be horrible if they already had one? The pressure on us geez, the French are coming. Does anybody remember where we put that stupid statue? It wasn't a gift for us. They dumped it on us. It was to teach their people in the Marxist revolution of France. Look at what America has done. They have broken the chains of slavery by having the law, nature's God, the Declaration of Independence. They're changing the world, and the flame is imprisoned lightning. What is imprisoned lightning? The light bulb. Because the light came from here. Free people thinking, free people able to keep their idea. And what did Europe give us? Marx and Darwin. Can anybody tell me the actual name of Charles Darwin's book on the origin of species? Yep, that's part of it. On the origins of the species by means of natural selection, or the preservation of favored races. Anybody who's like, oh, you know what? Darwin, he was great. Really? Because that sounds kind of racist. This kind of science led the world into horror shows. Euthanasia, Mengele, the Holocaust, sterilization here in the United States, the progressive era at the turn of the century, which, I remind you, in this crowd, I am telling you, there is the next Abraham Lincoln, there is the next George Washington, there is the next Ronald Reagan, there is the next Donald Trump, somewhere in this audience. But I warn you, somewhere in this audience is the next Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, read up on Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Roosevelt, the man who said, you know what, when are we ever going to get this? We can't just let people breed with whoever they want. I mean, we don't do that with our horses or our cattle. Why would we let our people do that? Oh, thank you, Teddy. He was the author of the progressive movement. There are progressives on the left and there are progressives on the right in the Republican Party. Be very careful. Learn history, or you will fall to the mercy of things like, hey, I don't like it, it's bad, we should ban porn. Bad idea, gang. That's a progressive. That's progressive thinking. You are for freedom. You are for liberty. You're for allowing people to make mistakes and suffer the consequences of those mistakes, but also rise to the greatness that only they can do. That's who we are. Otherwise, you fall into things that are horribly dark. This is Mein Kampf. This was the gift from Adolf Hitler, signed by Hitler, and given to von Stauffenberg. Anybody see Tom Cruise in Valkyrie? That's von Stauffenberg. He posed as a Nazi. He may even believe some of it for a while, but this spine tells me this book was never opened. There's not a page marred on this. There's not a page dog-eared on this. Von Stauffenberg is the guy who ended up trying to kill Hitler. I forgot to bring, I have the napkin that was around Hitler's neck when von Stauffenberg tried to kill him with shrapnel holes and bloodstains. That guy was a hero. That guy wouldn't fall in line. A righteous among the nations is somebody who saved saved Jews. And there were lots of them, not enough, but at the time, I don't know how I would have done it. My life, my family's life, if I even look out the window to see what's happening, if I ask a question, they'll execute my whole family. That takes guts. No, sorry. That takes one thing: knowing who you are before that happens. It's easy to say you won't give in. Trust me, especially in your generation where you can be famous online. Fame and fortune is battery acid to your soul. It will destroy you. It will captivate you. You're seeing it every time in Washington. You're seeing it every time on television. You're seeing these people get a taste of power. Oh, my precious. You see it. They can go in good people, but it changes you if you don't know who you are. Anybody knows baseball? This is a Honus Wagner card. This is the most valuable card in all of baseball cards. Do you know why? He wasn't a great player per se. I mean, he was good, but it wasn't because of that. Because he was from Pittsburgh. No. I'm sorry you were from Pittsburgh. No, it's because not what's on the front, but what's on the back. What's on the back is an advertisement for Piedmont cigarettes. He didn't smoke. He thought it was immoral. They had already printed all of these. And he said, "You can't put that out. I don't want kids thinking that I smoke or endorse cigarettes." They said, "Honus, dude, you don't have that much juice. Just let these out. They've already paid for them. It's going to cause a lot of trouble." No. So they were destroyed. That's why this is famous. We only look at it because of the price, but he already paid the price. And it's a testament to who we need to be. You know who Jesse Owens is? Jesse Owens is the guy who went to the Olympics in Berlin. He's black. He was told not to go. He changed the world. He went. This is the Olympic torch from the Berlin Olympics in Nazi Germany. This is the torch that went into the stadium, and Jesse Owens was there. But you know who the real hero is? It's not necessarily Jesse Owens. It's the German who everyone believed was going to win. And he watched Jesse practicing his jump in front of Hitler, in front of Goebbels. This amazing German star came up to Jesse and said, "You're jumping too early. I'm going to put my towel down. Jump right at the towel." He backed up with Hitler watching. Jesse Owens jumped at the towel and won the gold. He was sent to the front. He was killed because he helped a black man. He helped an American. Hitler despised him for that. He shamed the German race. He talked to Jesse before he went to the front. He said, "The only thing that's important to me, I know I'm not coming back. Please, someday, tell my children who I really was." Some things are more important than fame and fortune. Big ideas, kindness, decency, That's much more important than anything else. And when you have a small government, because you're right, big government sucks. Big government sucks. This is the original prospectus of Disneyland. This is Walt's original idea of what Disneyland was supposed to be. It wasn't ever shown anywhere until I purchased it a few years ago. Nobody had ever seen it. You might have seen the map that I'm not going to open up here, hand-colored by Walt Disney. He announced in 1954, I'm going to build something that no one understands. He did it in the fall of 54. In the summer of 55, he opened that park. You couldn't get an environmental study done for the bees in that kind of time now. Why? Because big government sucks. This is freedom. Think of what we did when John F. Kennedy in the 60s said, we're going to go to the moon, we're going to put men there, and we're going to bring them home safely, and we're going to do it in the next 9 years. That was insane. My father was born in 26. He told me, Glenn, when we went to the moon, I didn't think we ever would go to the moon. It was impossible. Not in America, it wasn't. This is the lunar landing map that they used. I'm running out of time on Apollo 12. Let me tell you this. Am I close? Time? 1 minute? Oh my gosh, it's a miracle. Praise Jesus. Can I get an amen? Let me tell you this. Because you live in this land, you are Charlie Bucket. You're one of the few that got the golden ticket. Willy Wonka's factory is open to you, a factory of dreams, a factory of ideas, of magic, because you're free. Don't let that slip through your fingers. We are Americans, and we hold these truths to be self-evident. Good night.
Thank you. Rudy? Oh, that's not me. Well, it's a great honor to follow Glenn Beck, except he did do one thing that annoyed me. He talked about baseball. And it reminded me, going to see if I can do one better. Probably not on my speech, but about baseball. So he had a Honus Wagner card. Do you know what this is? Can you see it? This is the New York Yankee championship ring in 2000. Okay. And when I was the mayor of New York City, I got 4 of these rings because the Yankees won 4 World Series. But because I'm a Republican and I'm held to a different standard which I'm going to talk to you about tonight. Do you know when I ran for president in 2007, they wrote all these articles about how these rings were bribes. They were bribes by George Steinbrenner, who gave them to me so he could get a big new Yankee stadium. I swear to God. So I was a prosecutor as a young man. I've always been exceedingly careful about all these rules. I produced the records going back 10 years of my payment for each one of these rings. I paid for every single one of them, and I even paid taxes on them. Wait. So I had a press conference, and I said, "Are you going to apologize?" And one reporter put up his hand and he said, "No, I'm not going to apologize." I said, "Why?" I went to a sports specialist, and the sports specialist said, "Because that ring has your name on it, it's worth a lot more than you paid for it, because a collector would pay $100,000 for the ring." I said, "Oh, okay." I'm wearing a suit. This is Rudy Giuliani's suit. I paid $500 for it. What would a collector pay for it? $5,000? So you mean when I go buy something, I have to say, "What's the price?" $500. "Oh, but what is it if it's mine?" $5,000? And I'm supposed to pay $5,000 for the suit? All the other reporters laughed, and he said, "Yes." Now, this was 10 years before Donald Trump, but you can see why he's been my friend for 30 years. You know what my response was? "You're an idiot." Now, I wish we could have a lot of fun in this speech, but we can't. And we can't have a lot of fun because not only are we facing an election in 2020, so what? We face elections all the time. We are facing something going on in our country today that is trying to destroy the Constitution of the United States. That is what this coup and this impeachment is about. It's about taking our Constitution and tearing it up. It's about taking a country that is known as a nation of laws, not a nation of men, and now we will say women. You know what that means? What does that mean? That means equal justice. We're all treated the same. Well, I'm going to spend some time showing you that doesn't exist in our America today. And if there isn't equal justice under the law in America, then there isn't America. We're a country of ideas and ideals. Not just people, ideas and ideals. And equal justice under the law is one of our most sacred ideals. And I'm going to talk to you about that. But before I do, I want to congratulate Charlie. I want to congratulate Turning Point, because you're creating a change that will affect us for decades. For years, we have been very, very worried. I have, when my children went to school, about the indoctrination that takes place in our schools. We would have to be blind not to see it. Our children go to school, and if they're not fortunate, and we're not fortunate, they are being indoctrinated. They're being indoctrinated into an economic system that has brought misery, poverty, oppression, and the loss of life to people everywhere it has ever been used, called socialism. They're not taught about Hegel and Marx, and they're not taught about Stalin and Lenin, and they're not taught about the gulags and how the people in Poland couldn't practice their religion until Ronald Reagan won the Cold War. They're not even taught about what's going on in Venezuela today, where people are selling their body parts for $500 so they can eat. That's what socialism brings you. Our children aren't taught that. Our children aren't taught, and I believe it should be taught with humility. We're not perfect. Our children are not taught that this is the greatest country on earth and the greatest country that ever existed. There is no country on earth that has lifted more people from poverty than the U.S. The Soviet Union pushed people into poverty. The Chinese have 700 million people who are living below a poverty line we wouldn't even recognize. And we have in America, even before Donald Trump, where everyone had opportunity. And now we have an America in which the poorest people in this country are doing better than ever. So I want to thank you for the work that all of you do in challenging our educational system and challenging the young people who I feel are victims of propaganda by going into the schools and challenging their thinking and getting them to think like you do, independently. And we need you to continue that. But I want to bring another problem to your attention. It's one that affects us right now, and this election is going to decide which direction we go in. I say that America today and for some time has a double standard. What does that mean? That means that a Republican leader is treated differently than a Democratic leader. I don't mean treated differently in restaurants and hotels. Sometimes they are. I don't mean being treated differently in getting tickets, or I mean they're treated differently in two very important places: the media and the courts. This is true at a high level, it's true at the middle level, and it's true at the school level. So let's talk about the high level first, okay? The President of the United States has had the Congress, in a totally partisan vote two bills of impeachment. I didn't hear that. What did you say? I'm not allowed to repeat it, but I come from Brooklyn. You're right. But it's worse than that. It's worse than that. It's illegal, it's immoral, and it's unconstitutional. I'm a lawyer for 50 years. I started at 8 years old, like Abraham Lincoln. I have practiced law and argued cases in most courts in the United States, federal courts, including the United States Supreme Court. So I know what I'm talking about. Let's take the first article of coup. No, let's take the first one, abuse of power. Now, first of all, Congress has, particularly the House, a great deal of discretion about how to do an impeachment. But it doesn't have unlimited power. No institution in our government has unlimited power. Even you and I, as citizens, don't have unlimited rights. There's balance in everything granted by our brilliant Constitution. What that means is Congress, the House, has the power to impeach, but it can't impeach just because it wants to, in any way that it wants to, at any time that it wants to. Otherwise, we would have a government of total chaos. So, there's a qualification debated very, very heavily during the Constitutional Convention, written about in the Federalist Papers, clear as the nose on your face, unless it's the nose on Adam Schiff's face that keeps growing. The United States Constitution, Article 4, says the following: you will only be impeached for committing treason, bribery, or a high crime or misdemeanor. You can search through the thousands and thousands and thousands of pages of federal statutes, criminal and otherwise. There is no such high crime or misdemeanor called abuse of power. They made it up. They made it up. If they're allowed to go ahead with this impeachment, they can impeach people for saying words they don't like. Maybe something like I say, that Islamic extremist terrorism is a great danger to the modern world. They could say that was, an abuse of language, and I'd get impeached for it. I don't know. If you have Congress, in particular the House, have the power to impeach for anything without limits, I'm sorry, that is unconstitutional. No branch of our government, the legislature, the executive, the judicial, is unlimited. Even Nancy Pelosi's crooked Congress is not unlimited. They need limits on their power, and they need limits on the amount of money they steal. This is why they don't like what I'm doing in Ukraine. Because you know who was making the big bucks in Ukraine? We keep telling the Ukrainians, you're corrupt. You know what the Ukrainians tell us? You're a bunch of hypocrites. Your vice president comes here, he puts his son in a $8 million job that will eventually be $14 million. The son has no experience in the oil and gas business. The son's only experience in business, his private equity fund got sued and went bankrupt, and he just got thrown out of the military for failing a drug test. Oh, by the way, when that happened, the press never asked the question, at 43 years old, how did he get into the military? Because he was the only one available in the country that could do his public relations job? Because that's what he did, public relations? Oh, and maybe his drug problems stem from having PTSD from doing public relations. How phony is it? Can you imagine if Eric Trump were now put into the military and he was allowed to put out press releases? You don't think it would be on the front page of the New York Times and the Washington, whatever the name of that rag is, and CNBC and MSNBC? And this is what I mean by the double standard. If it's going to be ignored for baby boy Biden, then it should be ignored for a Republican. But it shouldn't be ignored. Corruption should never be ignored. Ever, ever, ever. I prosecuted. I am not talking from the top of my head. I'm talking from experience. I've prosecuted over 100 corrupt police officers. I prosecuted and convicted United States congressmen. I prosecuted state officials, and I became mayor of New York City because I prosecuted almost the entire administration of Edward I. Koch. And I prosecuted a pretty equal number of Republicans and Democrats, and I used to teach my assistant U.S. attorneys, political affiliation stops the day you walk into this office. Neither political party, please listen to this, and remember it, we're conservatives, we're Republicans, we have the better philosophy, without doubt. However, neither political party has a monopoly on virtue or vice. We all have some really bad people. We do too. We see them get in trouble. But we also have some very, very good people. But they should be treated the same. And can you tell me, if we change the names from Biden to Trump, and Trump told the president of the Ukraine, I want you to fire the prosecutor who is investigating my son for money laundering. Do you think that I would have to be up here arguing about it? Do you think I'd be under attack for 3 months as if I did the crime? They attack me more than they attack him with false charges. Of course it wouldn't. It had been news from the very beginning. It wouldn't have just been news. They would have added on to it. They'd have lied about it. They'd have tripled the amount. If it were Donald Trump getting that criminal case against his son killed, and this happened 3 years ago, and it wasn't even covered. It wasn't even covered. The press didn't even bother. Joe Biden gets up in front of the Council on Foreign Relations, Council on Left-Wing Foreign Relations. And they have, Council on Foreign Relations, people there they're all geniuses. No, they're self-acknowledged geniuses. They all wear striped pants. And they're diplomats. So, they're smarter than you and me. So Joe Biden gets up and just 2 little sentences says, probably exaggerating a little because Joe likes to make himself a hero. Remember, he climbed up the tree under battle and gave a guy a medal. It turned out there was no tree, there was no battle. He didn't give the medal, Obama did, and it was in the White House. Just making himself a hero. So Joe Biden says, I told the president of the Ukraine, if you don't get rid of that son of a prosecutor, you're not going to get your $1 billion loan guarantee. The president of the Ukraine said, you don't have the power to do that. And big, tough Joe, you know, the one who wants to fight with Donald Trump in the schoolyard? How about this and this? I don't think he can reach him. I don't think Joe could reach him. But in any event, he says that, and then he says, you got 7 hours to decide or I'm going back with your money. Now, do you know that at that time, Ukraine had almost no money in the bank? No money, because their prior president had stolen in excess of $10 billion? And do you know under whose watch he did that? Barack Obama. And some of those ambassadors you saw testify, they're worried about corruption. If they were worried about corruption, why the hell didn't they do anything about it? Why does Trump have to do it? So just think of this. Not one single one of those geniuses in the audience said to themselves, oh my God, that sounds terrible. That sounds like a bribe. Here's a bribe, offering something of value in exchange for official action. Something of value, $1 billion loan guarantee. Official action, fire the son of a bitch. Geez, I learned that in the second day of criminal law. That's a bribe. They didn't react. The press didn't react. If the press had reacted, they would have said, this is kind of strange. A vice president forcing a prosecutor out. Never heard of that before. Maybe there's something to it. And then maybe they would have done something known as Google it. And you know what would have come up? A December 9th, 2015 article, maybe the only critical article the Times ever wrote about Biden, that said that Joe Biden's son had this job with the crookedest company in Ukraine, paid by one of the biggest crooks in Ukraine. He had this job, and it seemed like it would be a big conflict. Maybe they'd put the two things together, and they would have seen there's probable cause to believe a crime has been committed, and maybe like every other American that would be in that position, he'd be put under investigation. But he wasn't. And he isn't to this day. He is not to this day, as far as I know, being investigated for having confessed to a bribe. That's outrageous. It's un-American. And until we fix that, we do not have equal justice under the law. I'm going to tell you why it's so phony. Just 2 months ago, a headline appeared. It said, Donald Trump threatens President of Ukraine with no military aid unless he investigates Biden. Oh my God! Bribery, extortion, murder. He should be impeached, hung. He probably did it 20 other times. He said the same thing Biden said. You go back and think about it. Same thing, right? What he said was, he didn't say it, but what they said he said was, I'm offering you a thing of value, $400 million in military aid, and I want you to take official action. Quite a bit less significant, really. He wasn't trying to get his son out. He may have very well been doing it, you could say, for legitimate foreign policy reasons, since Ukraine does waste a lot of money, and they admit it. So why was that treated so differently? Because there's a double standard. And when the double standard is not just the press, but it's the law enforcement system in this country, then we have a very, very big problem that's going to rip this country apart unless we fix it, unless we have the courage to stand up to the attacks that the press subjects you to when you challenge it. And the reason the press attacks you for it is because they are, many of them, part of the cover-up. They're not part of the solution. It finally turns out that the president produces the transcript. The transcript shows he didn't threaten. He said nothing about money. He didn't demand. He didn't say you have 7 hours to investigate Biden. He didn't threaten to walk out of the room. He talked to him first about the disparity in money that America and Europe give to the Ukraine, and President Zelensky agreed with him. And then he spoke about the corruption that went on in Ukraine in 2016 involving Americans and Ukrainians, 120 lines devoted to it, most of it about how the Ukrainians interfered in the election, completely developed a false piece of evidence called the Black Ledger, used it to investigate Manafort, and it turns out that it's a forgery, that what they claimed were Manafort's initials are not, and numerous other people now have come forward to say did the same thing to them. The FBI didn't use it at Manafort's trial, and the FBI is refusing an FOIA request so we can examine the forensics of it to show it's a phony piece of junk being used to investigate an American citizen. I don't care whether he was guilty or not. That's for a different thing and a different matter. But we don't create phony evidence for political reasons and let people get away with it. And then they have the audacity to charge him with a second one. The second one is obstructing Congress. The biggest obstruction to Congress is Nancy Pelosi. No, she's the biggest obstruction because they don't do a damn thing. Before he was inaugurated, they decided to impeach him. The only question is, can we find something to impeach him with? So they try Russian collusion. Not true. They try obstruction of justice. Not true. They try the emoluments clause. They can't even spell emoluments clause. Not true. I don't know what else they tried. Maybe jaywalking. So they had to make it up. Do you know what the obstruction of Congress is all about? It's about challenging subpoenas. One of the people obstructing Congress is me. They subpoenaed all of my records. I'm his lawyer for almost 2 years. There's something that the shiftless and Nadler doodlebrain seem to forget. Attorney-client privilege. It's sacred. If I turn those records over to them, I get disbarred. They want to disbar me for representing Trump. They do. They try. They had four attempts to disbar me. Never had a complaint against me in 50 years as a lawyer. And now I'm being investigated for crimes. I assure you, I have never committed a crime. I've been a prosecutor all my life. You can go read about the people I put in prison. You can go read about the difficult cases that I had. I'm being investigated by the office that I ran and probably was the most successful United States attorney in the last 100 years. They're very jealous of that. But I dare you to find anything that I did. I don't lobby. I don't represent foreign governments. They said I had vast investments in Ukraine. So I said, if you find them, I'll split them with you. I did 2 pieces of work there, security consulting, for which I was paid. One of it was considered one of the best reports given to the Ukraine in the last 20 years. I do legitimate work. I do it really well, and I get paid a lot of money for it. I'm not a communist. I'm not a communist. But I've never cheated anyone, hurt anyone, violated any law. And why are they doing that to me? They didn't do that to the lawyers who were represented Bill Clinton, did they? Did they go after the lawyers representing Hillary Clinton when they surely fixed that case? Come on, you can't tell me 30,000 emails disappear. Cell phones get hammered. Boom, 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 boom. Servers get bleached. And her lawyers don't even get looked at. What did they know about it? All the people around her were immunized. Everybody around Trump was indicted. That's called a double standard. And it can't exist anymore. And let me take it down. Let me take it down to the more basic. Yes, it happens to Donald Trump. Yes, it happens to Republican governors, political leaders, congressmen, senators, and in some cases, very, very large donors. They are all being hunted. There must be 100 reporters trying to find something I did wrong. I mean, I got to go back and remember the fight that I had in kindergarten because the song Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer came out, and I thought the other kids were making fun of me. And my father taught me how to box before I was born. My father was a boxer. So I would get into fights with them, and the nun had my mother come to school and say, "Your son has to learn how to deal with his anger." And she said, "What? Well, I don't like that song." So you know what my mother told me? My mother said, "Remember the end of the song." I don't remember the end of the song, Mommy. "Rudolph will go down in history." I said, I like that. Not bad, right? Okay. So you all saw this a week ago. 14-year-old boy, right? He spends his own little bit of money, and he buys himself a Trump hat, puts on the Trump hat a couple of times, gets harassed, gets yelled at, gets screamed at, puts down the Trump hat and is afraid to wear it. But they don't forget. One day, on a bus, they beat the hell out of him because he's a Trump supporter. And this is America? And the corrupt news network and MSNBY or whatever the hell it is, CBS, ABC, they don't cover that? That's not on the front page of the New York Times? A little boy being beaten up because with his own money he bought a Trump hat. This is the Soviet Union. This isn't America. You got to cut these things out right away. You can't let them grow. It's like anti-Semitism. You can't let anti-Semitism grow. When you see it, you go after it and you cut it out. You don't let that happen to a 14-year-old boy in America. But that's the Nancy Pelosi America. That's the Schiff America, based on hate and jealousy and anger and fear. Fear that he's going to really find out how crooked they are. And he's really going to find out how much money maybe their son is making or their husband is making selling their office, which is what the Bidens did for 30 years. You think this was new? They were selling his office when he was in the Senate. Every place Joe Biden was the point man, the Biden family made millions. That's a good job, being point man for Obama. I thought the vice president only got $170,000. Yeah, but you can supplement your salary. Make him point man in Iraq, and Brother James, who's about as qualified as little Hunter, gets put into a $1.5 billion housing deal, and Brother James doesn't know a damn thing about housing. The press overlooks that. Joe's answer, I don't know anything about my family business. Then Hunter comes along. Hunter makes $8 million from the most crooked oligarch in Ukraine, from one of the most crooked companies in Ukraine. And what's Joe's answer? I don't ask anything about my family's business. Then they go to China, and Joe takes him there on Air Force Two. And Joe is supposed to help us, America, to get China out of the Sakhalin Islands that they were just beginning to take over, and to get the tariffs reduced. Even the New York Times, if you go back and read it, said, he was a failure. They didn't get out of the Sakhalin Islands, and the tariffs went up. In fact, Joe has been a failure at every foreign policy mission he's ever been in. However, the guest that he took on the trip, his son, was a big success. 12 days after, the Bank of China became a partner with the young Biden and with Kerry's stepson and with Whitey Bulger's nephew. You may or may not know who Whitey Bulger is, but he was one of the biggest organized criminals in the country. You can't make this up. 8 days later, China puts him into a $1.5 billion deal. Goldman Sachs doesn't get deals like this. And this is because this guy's experience in business is knowing how to make businesses go bankrupt. Or do you think all these payments were real simple? They were to buy Joe Biden's influence. They were to buy his office. That he was disgustingly selling the office of vice president. He sure sold it for a lot of money, but he sold it, and the press won't look at it, and the prosecutors are afraid to investigate it because the press will make the prosecutors the bad guys. This has to stop. It has to stop now. This election has to make it stop. We can only exist as the great country we've been if there's equal justice for all. There's not one system for a Republican where if there's the slightest bit of suspicion, let's go investigate them, their family members, the people who work for them, the people who may know them. Let's not really check the articles out. Let's lie and then correct it the next day. And then the second one in which, I don't know, I mean, Joe Biden could actually just be carrying a sign saying, I committed bribery, I committed bribery. And the press will say, the charges are debunked. Nobody investigated them. There's no evidence. No. There are 5 witnesses, 3 tapes, 35 documents. I could prosecute that case in 3 weeks, and if I didn't get a conviction, I would retire from the practice of law. He is so guilty, it's ridiculous. Here's what I want you to do. I want you to make sure that this election puts to the American people, do you want to continue with this double standard? I want you, this great organization, Turning Point, I want you to take some of your energy and I want you to collect these situations about that young 14-year-old boy or a young woman I know in the District of Columbia school system. She showed up as a freshman. There was a picture of her online carrying a Trump sign with a Trump hat on, and they put her through hell for 3 years. Texts, disgusting things said about her, calling her a Nazi, and she's Jewish, calling her a Nazi, making sexual innuendos and references, booing her whenever she would appear. And then, when we negotiated at least a cessation of this for a while we think about suing them, she got a text that I thought maybe summed it all up. This 17-year-old girl texted her, I don't know why you put yourself through this. After all, the District of Columbia is 97% Democrat. Republicans should not go to the District of Columbia schools. I mean, this is America. You know where that happens? That happens in countries where there are dictatorships. And they're moving us in that direction. The whole impeachment process just trashed the Constitution. No right to counsel, no right to call witnesses, no right of confrontation, no right to even have your lawyer there and investigate all the lawyers. They want to put Barr in prison, and they want to execute me. Good luck, by the way. The mafia tried that. And the FARC. The mafia, the FARC, and the word you can't say, Islamic extremist terrorists, have all taken out contracts of one kind or another to kill me. And my answer is, good luck. I just get angrier and I go after you more. So they can investigate me. I joined Donald Trump's campaign because I was his friend for 20 years, 28 years. I'm now his friend for 31 years. I knew he'd be a good president. I really joined earlier than I thought because I was disgusted at the way he was being so unfairly treated. But I will tell you, as a person who is one of his biggest supporters in 2016, as one of his biggest supporters in 2016, as someone who argued for him on television 1,000 times, he is a much better president than I ever thought he would be. And I don't know how religious I am, but I am very spiritual. And I do believe that God gives America the right person at the right time. You know? George Washington, who could turn down being king. Thomas Jefferson, who had the brilliance to write the Declaration of Independence. Abraham Lincoln, who could have withstood the pressures of that, but Abraham Lincoln. And more. I do not believe there's any man in America that could have gone through what that man went through. And I was there with him, by his side for much of it. And there are times in which he was attacked so viciously, so horribly. His sons, his daughter, his wife, the most beautiful first lady I've ever seen. And maybe the classiest and one of the best educated. She speaks 5 languages more than I do, and she speaks mine better than me. The woman is brilliant. And does she get the credit she deserves? So, remember what I said. Double standard. We got to win this election. But to save America for the future, we have to smash the double standard in half. We have to crush it. We have to destroy it. And the day after the election, we go back to equal justice for all. Thank you.
I always say congratulations.
The front lines of the war against communism coming back to America under the guise of democratic socialism. So I get to speak after America's mayor and before Candace Owens. Thank you, Charlie Kirk. All right, God bless you. I think this is the biggest ever. This is where we all get to recharge our batteries and fight for the future of America. If you don't know who I am, I'm Sebastian Gorka, and I had the honor to serve as Deputy Assistant to President Trump and as his strategist. And let me channel my old boss. I have some prepared remarks, and people always like it when you tear them up, right? He likes to go off record, off script. and that's what I'm going to do tonight. I have two questions that I want everybody to think of. This is Christmas. It's a time of reflection, and I want you to think about two things for the next few minutes. Who are you, and what does America mean to you? I have a certain reputation in the media. Jesse Waters once called me the scariest guy on TV. I like that. I like that. And I like that image of a tough guy, but how tough am I? My role model was my father. He was a living hero, a mountain of a man, a freedom fighter. And one day, he shocked me. When you have a role model, maybe it's your grandfather, favorite uncle, or your father, and out of nowhere, this person you think is a hero starts to cry. What does that do to you? What does that do to not only the image you have of them, but the image you have of yourself and the role model you've built yourself around? The only time I ever saw my father cry was when somebody in passing mentioned the name of a friend of his. Who was that friend? That friend was a member of my father's secret Christian student organization in college. Why secret? Because my parents, as children, grew up under Nazi-occupied occupation, under Nazi control of their country, Hungary. And then when the Nazis were defeated, the communists took over. And my father wanted to resist, like those brave young men and women on the streets of Hong Kong right now. And he created, yes, yes, yes. How beautiful is it to see those young men and women hold a Thanksgiving on the streets of Hong Kong with our flag. God bless them. And my father decided when the communists took over Hungary to resist, not with a gun, not with a bomb, but by undermining the communist takeover of his country, by gaining access to information important to the Soviets and smuggling it out to the West with a group of fellow Christian patriots. And he did that. And one of them was the courier, Bela, who could smuggle the information out to the West and eventually to MI6. Unfortunately, at the end of that chain of smuggled reports was a man called Kim Philby. Kim Philby is one of the greatest traitors of Western civilization. He ran that group of young patriots until he could identify every single one of them and betrayed them to the KGB. My father was then arrested by the Hungarian secret police, tortured and imprisoned. He was later liberated by young men and women, much like the kids from Hong Kong in the glorious days of the Hungarian Revolution. But when Bela's name cropped up in conversation one day with my father, and I was only a kid, my father started to cry. Why? Because my father was in a political prison when Bela was in the courtyard being executed. Why am I an American today? Why did I choose this country? I am a proud legal immigrant to the United States. I chose this country because America is the greatest nation on our blessed planet. What does America mean to you? Let's put it in context. What has America done in the last 102 years? 102 years ago, as Brits, Germans, and Frenchmen were massacring each other in the trenches of World War I, what did we do? We went to save Europe from itself. Then we did it again, less than 50 years later, as whole groups, so whole ethnic groups were being exterminated by the Nazis, as the Europeans were decimating each other again. We deployed our young men and women to save the world from one of the deadliest ideologies known to man. And then what did we do for the next 40 years? We stood on the wall. We defended Judeo-Christian civilization from an even more deadly ideology. Because yes, Hitler killed 6 million Jews. Yes, in World War II, more than 60 million men and women were killed. But the death toll of Karl Marx's utopian ideology in the last century was more than 100 million souls. And we, with a little help from Margaret Thatcher, blessed St. John Paul II, and of course, Ronald Reagan, we won. And now, under my old boss, the 45th Commander-in-Chief of the United States, what did we do to that group of evil men who didn't just decapitate people they disagree with or set them alight in cages, but who held right now in the 21st century, slave markets to sell women to men as sex slaves? What did we do? We deployed Conan the Wonder Dog. That great leader of men, what's his name? Barack Obama, told us, oh, ISIS, I'm sorry, you're just gonna have to get used to it. It's a generational threat. I'm sorry. Your kids, your grandkids are just gonna have to deal with it. When we, yeah, I know he does. You're not really educating us on that point. It's like socialism, there's a connection. When we arrived in the White House, Donald Trump took the leash off our military. Within 5 months, the vaunted caliphate of ISIS was a memory, and we just got Abu Bakr al-Baghdadi as well. So that's America. That's what leadership means. That's what loving your country can result in. And what's happening right now in Washington? A man who only took the job because he loves this country, because he sees 320 million Americans betrayed by both sides of the political spectrum. Don't get me wrong, I said this when I was in the White House, and I still believe it today. Donald Jonathan Trump became president despite the GOP, not thanks to the GOP. And right now, they want to remove him. They want to remove him. Why? I'll tell you why. Because A, they can't win, but much bigger than next year's election, much bigger than that. Donald Trump, our president, is the most dangerous man in America. Why? Because he's not a politician. In 2016, for the first time in our republic's history, we elected a man who'd never held public office or been a general. From George Washington to Barack Obama, all 44 presidents of our country had been a professional politician or a retired general. We chose a man who wasn't owned by anybody. tobacco, oil, big pharma, the unions, none of them owe Donald Trump. None of them control him. And that's why he's so dangerous. Donald Trump is doing this for one reason alone. It's the reason that you're here. He's doing this job, he's not doing it for the money, right? I think he's got a bit of money. He's giving his paycheck back to you. He's not doing it for the fame, because his last name was a global brand before he became president. From Scottish golf courses to skyscrapers in New York. He's doing this because he loves our country. But what have we learned now? What have we learned in the last 3 years? 19 minutes after the inauguration, 19 minutes after I became deputy assistant to the president, the Washington Post writes an article, "The impeachment of Donald Trump starts now." 19 minutes. Rashida Tlaib, on the first day she entered, yes. Rashida Tlaib, an avowed anti-Semite, like Ilhan Omar, like AOC. Show the love. On her first day in office as a newly elected congresswoman, she says, "We're going to impeach the mother." Right? They need to take him down because he is not owned by any of them. So what have they done? Just a little list of what they've done. We have now found out that the chairman of the most powerful committee in Congress, the Intelligence Committee, without hiding it, he actually put it at the end of that 500-page report, obtained the private telephone information, the private call logs of private citizens. My friend John Solomon, who's a reporter, they acquired the phone data, the call logs of the incredible warrior you just listened to, America's mayor, the president's private lawyer, Rudy Giuliani. And most dictatorial of all, and the thing should have you as angry as you've ever been, Adam Schiff, who used to be a prosecutor, wrap your head around that. Adam Schiff sent people to prison. Chairman Schiff acquired the private telephone data of the ranking Republican member of his committee. He's not a police officer. He's not an intelligence agent. He's not a judge. But AT&T just handed him Devin Nunes' phone logs. That's fine in Venezuela. It's fine in communist China, but not in America. Inspector General Horowitz, a perfect swamp dweller, said, "Oh, I'm sorry, I can't find any example of political bias in the FBI. I only found 51 different infractions, omissions, and irregularities in the FISA warrants that were used to spy on our campaign in the White House. Oh, and all of them lent in one direction. None of them favored us. None of them were beneficial to Donald Trump. Every single one of those omissions, those lies, those distortions helped Obama and his cronies." But there's no political motivation, despite the fact that everybody in this room right now can go and read the texts of the FBI lovebirds. What did the lovebirds text to each other? They're so smart, they're using their FBI phones. 50,000 texts. They're texting at an average of one text a minute. It's like pretty obsessive. And what do we know? How about this? We're not going to let him win, are we? No, we're not going to let him win. Oh, no political bias there. And even if he does, don't worry, because we have an insurance policy. What's the insurance policy? No, it's not impeachment. Robert Mueller. Robert Mueller was the insurance policy, who spent $35 million, hundreds of subpoenas and warrants and interviews, and still could find nothing. The only time I ever saw my boss angry, I was in the Oval by myself with him, and I was there on another issue, a national security issue. And for some reason, the topic of Russia came up. I think Jared had just testified. And he looked at me, suddenly got that look on his face, and he said, Sebastian, they will find nothing because there is nothing. This man has put up with more than any other president. And my question to you is, what are you going to do about it? Let's give Media Matters something to print. How about 12 more years? Did you get that, Media Matters? Are you like that cat on the laptop typing now? Have a sense of humor, you losers. So here's my message to you, and then I'll take a couple of questions. Don't just think about yourself and this country. Think about how we make this room 10 times bigger. Think about how every single one of you, Charlie Kirk started this, what was it, 6, 7 years ago, in a garage with a check for $10,000. Yesterday at our gala, Foster Freeze dropped $5 million on Turning Point USA. This is America, the America that saved the world from World War I, from the Nazis, from the communists of the Cold War, and is saving us now from the jihadis. But the Democrats wish to destroy everything you love. So I want you to think every single day, how can you be a little bit more like Charlie Kirk or Donald Trump or even, I don't know, Melania? Because she's one tough lady, let me assure you. That is a velvet glove wrapped around a steel fist. So, one message I have for you. They wish to take it all away. Whether it's freedom of speech, whether it's your Second Amendment rights, whether it's freedom of religion. They've said it. Remember, Justice Gorsuch was on Fox yesterday and said, Merry Christmas. What was the response from the media? What the hell is this with the GOP talking points? Merry Christmas is a No, Merry Christmas is about our God and Savior coming to earth. And as long as there is breath in our bodies, we will fight for the values of our civilization. I don't care what your skin color is. I don't care when you arrived. If you love America, if you come here legally, we will fight to keep our country safe. So, here's my little take home for you. I have a daily radio show called America First. We stream on YouTube, on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter @Seb Gorka. I'm giving every single one of you the ammunition you need to win. Oh, Media Matters, that's a rhetorical ammunition. Why? Ben Shapiro's great, but Ben is wrong on one thing. You know what made Ben really famous in the last few years? What's his favorite phrase? Facts don't care about your feelings. Yeah, that's right, Ben. But guess what? To quote my good friend Andrew Klavan, feelings matter too. Because that's how the left always wins. Yeah, that's how they win. They appeal to the soft, to the snowflakey, right? And we have to be like the president. We have to be like the Gipper, Ronald Reagan. You have to go out there and make this tent as large as possible by combining the two. You take the arguments, you take the logic, you take the facts, but you combine it with love. Love. And we will win, because I know there is one defining difference between the left and everybody in this room. The left's fuel is hatred. Hatred not only of this country and everything we stand for, but at the end of the day, and I don't want you to feel sorry for them because I don't have time for that, but it's hatred of themselves. When you deny God, a very wise man said, when you deny the existence of God, you know what happens? You leave a God-shaped hole in the man's soul. And that's what the left has done. They hate themselves because they know they're wrong. And why will we win? We're going to win because our fuel is what? Love. Love of liberty. Love of our country. God bless you all. All right, two questions. Two questions. Right there.
To your right, over here. To your
Oh.
right to your right here. Stand right up.
Go ahead.
Yes.
Where are we? Do it.
So, Mr. Gorka, do you think that the Chinese are trying to rig the election in the favor of Joe Biden? And if so, how do we curtail that?
Do I think who were trying to rig it?
The Chinese communists.
That's a good question. Were the Chinese communists trying to rig the election for Joe Biden? I don't have evidence, and if I did, I wouldn't be able to disclose it here. But the fact is, I'll tell you something as a fact, they wanted Joe Biden to win. This is a man who, can't string a sentence together without talking about his furry legs, okay? Who do you think they want to be president? Donald Trump or Joe Biden? You know the answer. Great question. One more.
Hi, Sebastian. Big
Hey.
fan. So I'm a recent new chapter president in Miami, in Doral. All right. It took me 4 months just to open that chapter and get it recognized and get a table. So I want to ask your advice. How can I get my school, Miami-Dade College West, which is filled with a ton of liberals, and they tore up 3 of my posters, how can I get them to listen to my message to actually be tolerant? Or is that even possible?
No, you can't start with logic. You don't start with logic, okay? Because you're not going to get anywhere. But how about this? Go to sebgorka.com. Invite me. I'd love to come. Oh, and by the way, Merry Christmas.
No, you can't just keep running. You know, you never get away.
will never give up. I will never give in. I will never back down. I will never be silenced. I'm going to do it until the Lord calls me home.
I'm born ready. I'm born ready. I'm born ready. I'm born ready. Yeah, I'm born ready. Tell him I'm born ready. Limit is not in my vocab. If I don't have, then I find a way to go grab. You out of bounds with the toe tap. I put the CD on my sleeve like a throwback. I didn't come to make friends or shake hands. I came back to break trends and rules I make bend. Too many came before me to fall off. I'm leaning for the glory as soon as the boss calls. Here to write a story, here to make a statement. Long live the king, you should bow down to greatness. This big coming out.
What's up, Atlanta? Yes.
I'm all drive, I can't even complain. I just made a hard left down victory lane. No pit stop, they tell me no pain, no gain. I was born ready, promise that won't change.
I get pissed off when people try to control me.
God made me free. I'm free. God made me free. I am going to stand up for that flag, stand up for that Constitution.
It's like the stars have aligned. Came in with a purpose like my birth was a sign. Competition time, they've been playing from behind. Come to realize I'm the best by design.
I refuse to be a victim of anybody for any reason.
One time for the hustle. Straight flexing, didn't have to lift a muscle. All bottom with the Wilson like Russell. No belts on my knees, don't buckle.
Black Americans are waking up and ordaining to think for themselves. Remember that Brexit is love.
This hearing, in my opinion, is a farce, and it is ironic that you're sitting here and you're having 3 Caucasian people testify and tell you what their expertise are. Do I know what my expertise are? Black in America. I've been black in America my whole life, all 30 years, and I can tell you that you guys have done the exact same thing every 4 years ahead of an election cycle, and it needs to stop.
Wow! How awesome is this? Can everybody hear me? Wow, this is huge. I think this must be the biggest SAS on the books. It is such and always an honor to be here. It is such a special event for me. All of you guys know that I got my career started at Turning Point USA. I think it's one of the greatest student organizations that we have in America that is fighting for Western ideals. It's funny because I remember when I first spoke here, it was 3 SASs ago, and nobody really knew who I was. A few of you guys did that are super plugged into Twitter. I think I had 40,000 followers. I was just a girl that was making YouTube videos, and I was super nervous. I didn't really know what to speak to you guys about. And I was reading my speech over and over again backstage and didn't really have much confidence because I was so new to conservatism. I was so new. I mean, think about this. Just a few years ago, 5 years ago, Candace Owens was a liberal, right? That's a crazy thing to think about, how much my life and my perspective have changed. And that's largely due, of course, to Donald Trump, right? I know so many speakers that you guys are going to hear from, not just tonight, tomorrow, the next day, are going to talk about the left and everything that's wrong with the left. And these are things that you guys know, and that's why you're in this room. But I also think it's important that we talk about what we're doing, how conservatives are changing things, how we're going to move forward. I remember feeling like there wasn't really a place for me in the conservative movement. When I arrived, Trump had just been elected. There were different camps of conservatism. There was this feeling like you had to pick which kind of conservative or which tribe of conservatism that you were going to be in. The Never Trump movement was big then. You guys remember that? The conservative Never Trump movement was happening then. And then there were people that were putting me through purity tests because they didn't know whether or not I was really a Trump supporter because I had never voted prior to that election cycle. And they were really suspicious that maybe I was a leftist that was maybe being planted by George Soros or something. And tons of hit pieces were written about me. I love hit pieces against me. I love reading them. And I remember one of the ones that was the most frustrating wasn't written by the left. It was written by the right. It was written by the National Review. They wrote a piece about me saying that my style of conservatism should be rejected, right? Because I was making YouTube videos and I was making them funny, like a flash in the pan. It was strategic. Because when I woke up to conservative principles, I said, why didn't I know any of this? Why didn't I feel that conservative principles were for me? And the truth is that they weren't very palatable before. The left was winning the culture war. That is why the left got so far to begin with. And there was this strand of conservatives that felt that culture is not what conservatives do. We're supposed to write thesis papers and have long lectures, and that's how we win. We win on the basis of ideas. I remember a popular quote that we all loved so much was when Ben Shapiro said, "Facts don't care about your feelings." You guys remember that, right? And I loved that. And then I thought about that for a while, and I thought, you know, the counter argument to that is that feelings don't really care about the facts. This is why we have this fertile ground of socialism here in America today, because people are largely emotional and they don't really care what facts you have to bring them. Telling them that facts don't care about their feelings is not really going to change anything. So how are we going to actually impact and change culture? Have conservatives always been the people that are just factual and don't care about the feelings? I started thinking about that, and I thought about Western civilization, the beginning of Western civilization. How many people in this room take in college a Western civilization course presently? I want you to look in the room. No hands are up. Do you want to? You do? You take a Western Civ class? You did. Okay, so one person has taken a Western Civ class. That's actually incredible. Because just a few decades ago, that was the #1 course that was offered and taken. I know you guys don't take it because the majority of campuses no longer offer it. Because the dumbest human being that has ever lived in America, Jesse Jackson, maybe Al Sharpton is a close second, led a group of protesters in Stanford. And they started saying, hey, ho, Western Civ has got to go. It was a group of black protesters, and they were saying that teaching Western civilization was fundamentally racist and ethnocentric. So they no longer wanted people to learn about Western civilization and the importance of Western civilization, and so they wiped it. Now you guys probably have gender studies. How many people are offered gender studies in this room? Look at that, right? Incredible. An entire study on genders. There's only 2. I don't know how much more you guys could actually study. Now they offer African American studies, they offer LGBT studies, all of these different courses that have replaced learning about Western civilization. So let's talk a little bit about what you're not learning in school anymore and the importance of Western civilization and where Western civilization began. Western civilization began in 6th century BC, in a time of tremendous misery, in a time of tremendous suppression. There was a Greek miracle. Suddenly in Greece there was progress and there was freedom that was found because they were organized by a bunch of city-states, unlike the rest of the world, which had these massive empires, like the Chinese Empire, the Egyptian Empire, the Persian Empire. Because they had this freedom to exist independently, they started thinking of ideas. If they knew that they didn't have some big oppressor that was going to come take it from them, they knew that they could create things and create concepts. Some of the greatest ideas came out of that period of time. Some of the greatest philosophers came out of that period of time. Plato, Aristotle, philosophy, which we still talk about and debate, came out of that period of time. And it was wonderful, all of this progress. But you know what else they did? They did culture. They started creating art, and they started creating music. And this is how they were able to influence the world with their ideas. I have learned over the course of the last 2 years something that I want all of you guys to remember. Feelings matter. When conservatives no longer create art, when conservatives say we don't do music, when conservatives say we don't do culture, conservatives lose. Another time that I was routinely mocked by people on our own side was when I embraced the conservative style of Kanye West, right? Everybody remembers that. And if I told you the amount of phone calls I fielded from people telling me it was going to be a big mistake, that he was going to flip, that he was crazy, right? That this is not what conservatives do, that this is what the leftists do. And I ignored them all because I understood the significance of how far conservative principles could go if they were given in that vein, if they were given in a cultural vein, if they were given musically. Today, I think the #1 gospel album in the world is Jesus is King. And that was cultural. That was something that was different. That is the way that conservatives have to compete if we are going to move the world forward with our ideas. It's not enough just to know the facts. We have to convert those facts into feelings. And in the past, when conservatives have done that, we have won in a really big way. Think about one of the greatest films ever made, which was a conservative principle, The Passion of the Christ by Mel Gibson, right? Where is that movie today? Why aren't we competing in that regard? Now Hollywood has become a cesspool of liberalism, and they've been implanting these ideas in the youth through the music, through the people that are on stage, through the Taylor Swifts of the world and the Beyoncés. They are polluting the minds of the youth, and we have to be able to compete in that regard, and that's what I do. I tell people that I'm not interested in politics, I'm interested in culture. Because Andrew Breitbart was right when he said that politics is downstream from culture. Every single thing that we are fighting today is a war that the left began a long time ago. The early seeds, when you think of today, the LGBT movement, right, which has taken a really, really, really dark turn. Talk about not knowing which bathrooms to go into. Did you guys read yesterday the ACLU is now mandating that men be offered tampons in the bathroom to establish equality for menstruation? That is an actual headline, okay? And we laugh at it, and we know it's crazy, and we know it's ridiculous, but you have to ask ourselves, how did we get to this spot? How did they get this far? They began planting those early seeds in the 90s when they really picked up the LGBT movement. When you had Melissa Etheridge, who was a country singer that came out. When you had Ellen DeGeneres, who was celebrated in the way that she came out. They began to win culture when Will and Grace became the #1 sitcom that was on TV. That was culture. That was how they won. Somebody said to me yesterday at dinner, they said, Candace, I think that one of the things that we should be fighting for is getting a hold on the super PACs because we don't want people to put millions and millions of dollars into candidates. And I said to them, do you think that the left is running a game that they just put money into the candidates? They're putting millions of dollars into MTV. They're putting millions of dollars every time when they want to get a message out. In 2016, think about the way we were polluted. Everything you saw on TV was a radical feminist message about how it's our time. Beyonce really went on the stage and did the Black Lives Matter dance at the Super Bowl. When they want to implant ideas, they go big and they go cultural, and that is exactly how we have lost and ceded so much ground to the left. I had a quick dinner a couple of weeks ago with Eric, and he said, who in the conservative movement do you think is making the most progress for conservative principles? Who do you guys think? The answer is Kanye West. Okay? That's the answer. And it's not because he's debating conservative principles. It's not. It's because he's going out and he's creating music and he's talking about Jesus being the Savior. He's talking about Jesus being the Savior of the world. And what that's doing to people, to realize that everything that we've done in society, we've gotten really far away from religion. And more importantly, we've gotten far away from family values. I believe that every single thing that the left is doing today is about breaking down the family. Everything, every movement. I believe that if the left learned something from ancient Greece, it would have been the Trojan horse, because they present ideas and they sound so beautiful and they sound so empowering, but they're killing us and they're killing our society. Feminism is a Trojan horse. It is killing our society. It is not about making women equal to men. Women are very equal to men. In fact, I could make a really sound argument that in this current society, we have more rights than men. What the left did to Black America was a Trojan horse. The government coming out and saying that they were going to help Black America through all of these programs and policies, like the welfare program, right? Which literally incentivizes the breakdown of family. When the government comes and they say, we will give you more money if you don't marry the father of your children. When the government comes and they say, if you have more children out of wedlock, we will give you more money. When there is an actual position in the United States government that someone comes around and checks the homes to make sure the father does not live there, that is the intentional breakdown of the family unit. I believe that leftism is directly related to atheism. I really do. I believe that they routinely mock God. They routinely mock people that are Christian. They routinely mock people that are Jewish. They routinely mock people that believe in something other than themselves. And the reason for that is because leftism can only really spread if people are narcissistic. If their worldview becomes all about them, right? When you're talking about destroying the family, turning men into women and women into men, that is exactly what they are after, the intentional breakdown of family. They've done this already. This may seem like it's new to you, it may seem radical to you, but they've done this already. The big experiment was Black America. When they removed the fathers from the home in the 1960s, they knew exactly what would happen. They knew that when you remove the pillar of a family away, those children are going to run to the streets. Not only are the children going to run to the streets, the children are going to still pursue that paternity and that maternity that they're no longer getting in the house. They're going to pursue that elsewhere. And where is the elsewhere that those children pursue that paternity and the maternity? Culture. Suddenly, Beyonce and Jay-Z become mom and dad. They're listening to music and they think Taylor Swift is their idol. This is what the left has done, and this is how Hollywood has become a cesspool of liberalism. The left invested in Hollywood and they tried to turn them into demigods in society because we began to worship Hollywood. And I know all of us are guilty of that. There's no way that people in this audience, if I went around, can't say that there wasn't some person that they were obsessed with. I was a little before your time. I was Christina Aguilera, Genie in a Bottle phase, right? And I would race home to watch her, and I wanted to be her. And my mother would accuse me and say it was a form of idolatry. And retrospectively, my mother was right. It is a form of idolatry. Hollywood has become a form of idolatry. When we have people abandoning their morals because they have a false god that they're worshiping, telling them what to think and how to think. We have to destroy those idols because the only idol that anybody should have is Jesus Christ. I encourage you, I know when you are here this weekend, you will meet so many people that you love and so many people that you are a fan of. But remember what I just said. You should have no idols. What you should really idolize is Jesus Christ. Who you should really idolize is Jesus Christ. And what you should be looking forward to is what you can create. Family. I just got married this year, right? There is something so special and so spiritual about a marriage. It really is. It is the way that God designed things to be, for us to be in love with other people, for us to start our own families and to pass down values. Do not allow the left to attack that. If you're a woman, do not allow the left to make you think men are your enemy. They're not. They do some stupid stuff. But these are the people that have ended world wars, right? There are boys that we sent overseas. There are brothers. They are our fathers. They are our sons. If you are a woman, it is incumbent upon you to defend men in this radical era of disgusting feminism. I found my voice, as I mentioned to you guys, in 2015, I began really just questioning everything and wondering why I thought that because of the color of my skin, I had to vote Democrat, why I thought that all Republicans were racist, why I thought that liberalism was freeing, when in fact it was starting to feel a lot like bondage. And I was blessed because the most cultural figure of America came down the escalator and announced his presidency for the United States presidency. I was blessed when Donald Trump came down because he was cultural. Because suddenly, if you were someone who didn't care about politics like me, suddenly you were paying attention. And he was saying things like #LockHerUp, and it was funny. Or you had a reaction, you were angry about it. And that was wonderful. One of the worst things that I hear people say, it especially comes from the older generation, oh, he's a great president. I just wish he would stop tweeting. No. This president should never stop tweeting. He should never stop tweeting. He should never stop tweeting because tweeting is cultural, because he is appealing to a different generation, the generation that I believe is going to save America, because there is no generation that is more plugged into culture than the kids and the students that are in this room today. That is a fact. But I have to tell you, it's important that we also understand how serious what we are facing is. And I think about this all the time. When I first got into this, I was excited and I thought it was fun. And now I realize, wow, how dangerous when we have this vision in America being disputed. The left and the right used to agree on some basic things, right? They used to agree that America was an okay country. They used to agree that they liked America. Now we have radical leftists that fundamentally hate America, that want to disrupt America, that want America to be over. They want America to be canceled. We have socialists that want to turn America upside down. To people that are older, they've lived in America, you've lived your lives, and it's amazing. But to the younger generation, if that vision of America wins, it's over. The stakes could not be higher in this next election cycle. I truly believe that. I believe that it's incumbent on every single person in this room to fight like your future depends on it, because it does. Figure out what you can do. We are in the midst of an ideological war. It may not feel like it, right? We're not in a war. We're sitting in a room. We're in a conference center. Everything's okay. But no, we are in the midst of an ideological war in this country. And like all wars, you need different people to win it. You need the writers, you need the fighters, you need the people that finance the war, you need the cultural warriors. You need to make sure that in every single day you wake up and you ask yourself, what is inspiring me and what is motivating me to fight? What motivates me to fight is my childhood. Feeling like the left robbed me of a childhood. Feeling like the left put me into a school system and made me believe that victimhood was a virtue. I am inspired by the idea that all we have to do is wake up Black America and we can save this country. I believe there's no one that has been more used and abused and lied to by the left than Black America. And if you awaken the minorities in this country to realize, like I realize, that they are not separate from the American dream, but they are a part of it, they will turn into warriors for this country. I want to end this by telling you guys that if you live in America, you are the luckiest, you are part of the luckiest human beings that have ever lived on the face of the planet. We are spoiled. We are spoiled. And I believe that what we are suffering from is peace. People do not realize that we are living in a time of tremendous peace, right? Because there is no world war for us to end, people are trying to inspire a world war. We need to learn to sit and be grateful and to respect the fact that our ancestors fought so we can have peace in this country. America is the greatest country. It was an experiment of ideas. It was people that agreed not on a sex, a gender, or a religion, but a philosophy. And that philosophy is that if you come to this country and you work hard and you stay out of trouble, this country will reward you. That is the American dream that each and every single person in this room has to fight to protect. God bless you all, and God bless America.
For a great first night. Please join us back tomorrow morning at 8:30 a.m.